Okay, well, welcome. And as I said before, my name is Kim Strader, and I'm the volunteer coordinator with Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy. And for anyone that doesn't know about Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy, we were established in 1995 by a group of three individuals. And we work all throughout the Loudoun County area. And our Bluebird program is a really good example of work that we do all throughout the county. In addition to that, we also do some habitat restoration projects like planting trees. We have an amphibian monitoring program where we monitor amphibians, frogs, salamanders, turtles, well, I guess amphibians and reptiles throughout Loudoun County. We also have a stream monitoring program where we monitor the health of 19 streams throughout the county. Our newest program is the Bald Eagle program with Dulles Greenway. So if you've not had a chance to check that out, we just had a third egg laid yesterday afternoon. So we'll see if we have 3 hatches this year. And I guess that's about it, except that, yes, our Bluebird boxes trails are located all throughout the county, public trails. And then we also have some home trails as well that people monitor 1 or 2 or more boxes at their own homes. So without further delay, I would like to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. It's Kiley Gannaway, and she is our education assistant and did this program last year, and then also helped us with coordinating a hands-on training for all of our monitors and trail leaders that we have. And so Kiley, this will be Kiley's last presentation for us. She is remaining as a Bluebird monitor on a couple of trails in the county. But Lisa McHugh, if any of you know her, she's been with the program for a long time. Lisa McHugh will be doing our education and training in the future. So Kiley, if you would like to go ahead and start.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming in virtually. I don't know about you, but it is really cold and gross outside. So whether you're looking to the football game or not, we're gonna try to keep this really fun and engaging for you guys today. So I know quite a few of you guys already monitor for Loudoun Wildlife. My hope for you today is to get a good refresher on bluebird life cycle habitat, get a little re-inspired and reconnected with why you monitor. And if you're new and you haven't been a bird monitor before, we hope to get you really intrigued by it and maybe see if you'd be interested in joining us. So thank you for making sure you're muted. If you have questions throughout the program, you have a couple choices. You can put them in chat and send them directly to Kim. You can jot them down. We'll save time at the end to kind of thank everyone for coming, release you guys, and then those who have questions can stay back. I'm going to try to get through this in roughly 45 minutes. So Kim has already given us a great intro to Loudoun Wildlife. And we'll get into what the VBS or Virginia Bluebird Society is. I'll show you guys some great pictures of bluebirds. We'll talk about where they live, the life cycle, some of the things that you would see if you come and monitor with us, what bluebirds eat. And then near the end of our program, we'll talk about what their population has looked like in the past, particularly here in Loudoun County too. We'll talk about friendly neighbors of the bluebirds, and then finally, nest boxes. Take a minute to read this quote. It's been at the heart of some of our bluebird monitoring for quite a while. I don't know about you, but I was never really a big bird lover. I actually got into monitoring because I wanted to volunteer and meet people, and then just got roped into it very quickly. So most of the monitors just enjoy getting outside, spending some time in nature, and then observing these birds. In addition to Loudoun Wildlife, that's who we work under and report to Kim. We also get a lot of good help and advice from the Virginia Bluebird Society. You know, if we come up on issues of predators or houses or boxes, repairs, that kind of thing. They were founded in 1996. And basically, the Virginia Bluebird Society takes data from all of the trails throughout Virginia, so beyond Loudoun County. We give our end of the year data, compile that to Virginia Bluebird Society. And then they'll track that data to see how the bluebird populations are doing and how weather might have affected those years' numbers. Everything from the Virginia Bluebird Society gets sent to the Northern America Society. So we've got the different layers where everybody's looking. All right, and Kim, you can hear me okay, right? Everything's good on your end?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay,
And if anybody is not muted, please be sure and mute your speaker. Thank you.
All right, so what is a bluebird? I've got some pictures of birds that might be blue, but they're not necessarily bluebirds. Some of these might be familiar to you. So you can do a little quick quiz there at home. Is this a bluebird? And we know, nope, that's a blue jay, the bold relative of the crow, actually. Second picture for you. The bird is blue. It's not our bluebird we're talking about, though. This is an indigo bunting, and it's related to the cardinal. And our last little quiz picture today. Again, another bluebird, but this one is a blue grosbeak, also related to the cardinal. There are different types of bluebirds. So if you monitor with us, you'll see the eastern bluebird. They're a member of the thrush family, cousin to the American robin. And they're throughout, so northern, eastern and Midwest portions of North America. Bluebirds can go up to Canada and then as far as down as Mexico too. So a lot of land that they cover and migrate to. So we've got the eastern bluebird, and we also have the western bluebird that are in western parts of North America. And the mountain bluebird, so that's around the Rockies, and they can go as far as Alaska. Usually you'll see these on different ranches, so that's their preferred habitat. But we talk again, primarily, we see the eastern bluebird. So a picture for you, similar to the cardinal, right, where the male is really bright and red. The male bluebird here has the sky blue on his back. He's got a little bit of red on his chest and then white on his belly, so he stands out, really easy to see. And then the female has similar coloring, but it's not as bright so that she can blend in and hide from predators. And the juvenile is peeking his head out. Those babies have a spotted chest, so it's almost like a camouflage for them. When they're still learning to find their way and how to stay protected from predators, they have that advantage of being camouflaged. So you've got the whole family right here in a nest box, nice and cozy. So now that we know what a bluebird looks like, where do they live? You guys might be surprised by this list I'll show you in a minute. But here's a map just detailing what I shared with you, how they can go up to Canada and down into Mexico. Sometimes they permanently reside, so that's the pink right here. We have permanent residents in Virginia. Bluebirds are thriving throughout the winter. And then that like lighter orange, they would go there and migrate there for breeding purposes. All right, moving on. So bluebirds are drawn to a habitat with open areas and scattered trees. I'll throw up a list of 8 for you guys. Parks, golf courses, cemeteries, schools, farms, suburbs, that's a big one, even wineries, and right in your backyard. So some data from 2021 that was really fun to compile and look at. We had 8 home trails reported that season. We'll talk about home trails a little bit later. There were 10 boxes total and 52 bluebirds were fledged just from home trails alone. So that came to a yield of about 5.2 per box, which is amazing. That's just their one season, that April, the early September season. The next place where there was a lot of breeding was golf courses. Those boxes had a yield of about 4.9 bluebird babies per season. So we can see that home trails were where we had most of the birds fledging, which was great. And all of these places are perfect for a bluebird because they have some open area where they can go hunting for food, but they also have the coverage of some trees. Bluebirds are what's called secondary cavity nesters. They need an enclosure, right? So the nest boxes, we kind of simulate the natural process there by providing a cavity for them. But ideally, it would have been in a hole in a tree that was left over from another bird. So a lot of times a bluebird might take a woodpecker's old hole in a tree. And then a fun word for you guys, a snag. Not only is it a problem you run into, but a snag is a dead or a dying standing tree. So that can be a preferred area for bluebirds to nest as well. But again, something that we're doing, just because of the lack of cavities for bluebirds with development, by providing these nest boxes, we're kind of stepping in and trying to provide what nature could too. And then we regularly monitor to make sure that we're not causing a problem by providing nest boxes, because you don't want to put one out there and not check it and let it go rogue. You'll run into some issues with that, which we'll get to that later as well. So bluebirds, once again, they're called secondary cavity nesters. All right, what is their life cycle? This is important for any monitor to know. There is a lot of information, but if you come and monitor with us, we have a wonderful binder printed out with the life cycle of a bluebird. Some of those key things that would be happening, you know, on day 8, their eyes open. On day 12, they start to move. So you can identify what day they are on, because the birds need different treatment based on how far along they are in their life cycle. So before any eggs are laid, roughly in February, a male will select the nest site and then he'll sing to attract a female. And that also serves another purpose to warn and deter other males away. And then in March, the females will respond to the male's song and territory and pick the lucky winner. And then this is when the monitors come in if you join us. It's usually late March or very early April when we start to monitor and record our data. The female will make her final selection with a mate and a site, and then it'll take her about 5 to 10 days to build the nest. Bluebirds, their nests are very identifiable because they're extremely neat, and the female works really hard to wind in the pine needles and the little pieces of hay, and it's a perfectly molded nest. I'll show you guys pictures in a little bit, but she'll mold it out with her breast and get it ready for her clutch. So when she has her nest built, she'll lay a clutch of 1 egg each morning for 3 to 6 days. Something I didn't know when I started to volunteer was that bluebird eggs can be white. Usually they're very bright blue, incredibly stunning when you see it for the first time in person. But when I encountered some white eggs, I got really nervous because I thought I knew how to identify the bluebird nest. If you look at this bottom picture on the right, you can see that that's very neat, right? It's tightly wound. And then in the middle picture, you can see where the female has patted it down to prepare for her eggs. But these white eggs are completely fertile, completely viable. It's just, a little bit, it's unique and it's a little bit of discoloration there, but there's nothing wrong with it. So I tell monitors, I don't want you to get scared. It's not house sparrow eggs. There's nothing wrong. The babies are more than likely going to be 100% okay, but just a cool fact that it comes out to be about 5% of eggs that could be white. During incubation time, the female will turn the eggs so that the baby and the material inside doesn't stick to the shell. So she'll keep them warm. And at this time, she'll be a lot more resistant to leaving the nest. Sometimes I've gone to monitor and I knock on the box, which is our protocol, right? We tap, make sure, like let them know someone's coming to their home. We open it up, and if there's a mama bird still in there, she usually flies right out. I get a scare, she gets a scare. But sometimes if she's on her babies or her eggs, she will stay there and kind of fight that normal instinct to fly off. She's keeping them warm and she's keeping them safe. So she'll do this for about 2 weeks before the babies begin to break through their egg. And if you look at this right picture, you can see one is starting to hatch at that moment. All right, moving on. So here we have, I love this photo. I love both of them. I think baby bluebirds are really cute, but they look like aliens to me a little bit too. The ones on the left, so the male or female will help them get the rest of the eggshell off them if they can't get it off completely. And you can see this guy on the left, he's got his mouth wide open. I have monitored and opened and seen a day-old baby or a day 0 baby bluebird. That's okay to monitor on those days. As long as we don't touch the birds, we don't move them, but we can observe them quickly, quietly, and then close the door and leave. But I've opened this and taken my little mirror in there and seen these birds with their mouths wide open, and they think I'm their mom. And I've exclaimed, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool." And at the sound of my voice, they start to open their mouths. So at this point, they are blind and they are completely helpless. You can see the bird on the right, his eyes are not open yet, and they won't open for another 7-ish days. So after the babies hatch, they are helpless. You might have some children of your own like this, where they need to be fed a lot and they need your help. I don't know if it compares to bluebird babies though, so maybe that'll make you feel better. The parents feed these chicks up to 5 times each hour, every hour of the day. And that's from dawn to dusk. So they're hungry, and that's both the male and the female are helping the babies here. So they're going out, getting food and bringing it back. Now, something that's really important too, the bluebirds do clean the nest. They move the fecal sacs out of the nest to kind of help deter predators and cleanliness, right? The safety of the baby. So parents are, not only are they feeding, but they're also cleaning. I'm sure you guys can relate at home. And then something that we are allowed to do as monitors, at the end of this life cycle, once the bluebirds have fledged and they're self-sufficient, we are allowed to clean out the old nest to make way for a new family, a new clutch that season. So we'll get to that later. There are some stipulations around that, but we do clean out old nest from nest boxes. And we make sure not to dispose of any of the nest material around the area. We take it with us for the same reason. We don't want to, break the nest apart right at the nest box and attract predators to it. So we will remove that and dispose of it elsewhere. And this is a great reminder. I know I've said it, but we don't touch or move the birds. You have to be trained to do that. So this is a great photo that will be in your binder if you monitor with us or if you're going to. Very helpful, but the person in this picture has been trained to do this. So as monitors, we just come and observe, take the data, and that's how we're helping this population. But I love the progression here. When you monitor, you have to put your best guess or estimate of how old the bird is. That helps us know what actions we need to take with the bird and with the nest. And this one is, for me, I'm a very visual learner, so I love how clear this is. And I love comparing the birds to it. Sometimes if I'm out in the field and it's a hot day and I don't want to deliberate at the box for a while, I'll just stick my phone into the nest box and snap a quick picture. And then when I'm done and I'm not out in the grass, I'm in the shade, I'll look at my photo and I'll compare it with this and I'll say, okay, I see the fluffy tufts of the bluebird. I'm pretty sure he's on day 7. And then I can accurately record that data too. So this is, I'd say this is probably my top favorite little cheat sheet here. Right, so once the babies have eaten, they're all taken care of, their place has been cleaned, they will fledge or fly the nest between 16 and 20 days old. If you jump down to this 3rd bullet point, this is really important. We tell our monitors, and it's all over the paperwork. So if you monitor with us, you don't have to be nervous, you'll forget it. It's in that binder. After day 12, so the day the bird hatches, right, 12 days after that, we do not open the box. We leave the box closed because we don't accidentally want to have the birds fledge prematurely. So after day 8, the bird's eyes are open and they start to get restless, they move around, and they get quite large. So at that day 12, they are pretty mature, and we don't want them accidentally falling out of the nest, becoming prey, or not being able to fly. So they do that around, again, 16 or 20 days. So what we do, that's why the math is really important, kind of trying to mark the day that the day old the bird is. So we'll keep that box closed until it's after the time that they fledged, and then we can go in and clean their nest out. So we make it easy for you on the data sheets though. And a question we get a lot is, do the chicks return to the nest, or are they gone? They usually stay near the parents for the season. It's something called cooperative breeding. Some of those fledglings will even help their parents with the next brood. And that can happen 2 to 3 times a season. I know that I've seen this. I go to check a box and I look up and it's not just one bird kind of circling, keeping an eye on me, it's 5. So I go, okay, the whole family's here. They want me to get out of their box. So I check it quickly and sneak away. But you will see that quite a lot too. I know when I started, I was confused, like, well, it's only the male and the female. Who else is here guarding the nest almost? But it can be their last clutch that helps. Here's some great pictures I love of the fledglings. How we talked about at the beginning of the presentation, you can see the birds here on that fence post. They are spotted and camouflaged pretty well, just as juveniles while they're trying to figure out how to take care of themselves. And then the bottom left, you can see that this juvenile is ready to fledge and fly the coop. We've touched on this a little bit, but bluebird families can raise 2 or 3 families each year. If you are a monitor, you know this, you've seen it. The boxes are hardly empty for more than a day or 2, and a new nest is already being built. Once the chicks fledge, we clean out the nest boxes, dispose of the nesting material, and a female will begin a new nest pretty quickly. So again, you've got the juveniles here with the spotted breast being fed. And another great picture. I'm sure parents can relate to this. And remember, guys, if you have any questions, you can jot it down and we'll get to it at the end, or you can send something in the chat directly to Kim and we'll try to answer your questions as best as we can. So I have been monitoring for 7 years, but I will tell you, I am by no means any kind of expert. I'm just sharing what very limited baseline knowledge I have. Okay, moving on. So we know what bluebirds look like. We know where they live. We know their life cycle, but what do they eat? I had a big misconception about bluebirds. I thought that all birds ate seeds. Nope. Bluebirds do not eat seeds. So it depends on the time of year what they eat. In the summer, insects comprise about 80% of their diet. That can be worms, spiders, lots of different critters. And they're going to gather those insects from leaves, branches, and on the ground. That saves them energy and conserves it. They also can catch insects in the air. I've talked to a lot of monitors that love watching bluebirds swoop down and catch bugs, but that of course can cost a lot more energy on their end. In a cool term, people call it hopping or off the wing when they swoop and get birds. So if it's summertime, they're eating primarily insects. And the wintertime is a whole different story. This can be a really detrimental time for bluebirds if you have a lot of frost or snow. So their diet is berries. Like I told you, they are not eating seeds. So you could put it in your yard. They might peck at the sunflower seeds, but other than that, they won't touch it. So they're eating all those native Virginian flowering plants in the wintertime: holly, cedar, mistletoe, sumac. So in that right picture, you can see that there is ice all over the berries. Even if it was 3-4 days of that, that could be really impactful in a negative way and detrimental to the bluebird, whose primary source of fuel is berries in the winter. All right, so that about covers it. Again, just kind of giving you some of the basics for their diet. Their population. It might be crazy to believe, but even in the 1980s, people had said that they hadn't seen a bluebird in their whole life. They were very close to extinction. Going back a little bit further than that, during colonial times, the bluebird was as common as the robin. So, there prolifically. Then in the 1850s, the house sparrow was introduced. So there are a number of reasons for that. One of the stories is that people wanted birds from Shakespeare or birds from England to remind them of home. And also it was thought that they would help keep bug populations down. So the house sparrow was introduced, which was terrible for bluebirds and native birds because house sparrows are very territorial and very aggressive. They are not protected here in Virginia. If we see a house sparrow nest, which I'll teach you guys how to identify, as monitors, one of our jobs is to remove house sparrow nests because they're an invasive species. Now we do that before eggs are laid. That's always our goal. Because they're cavity nesters as well. So they're competing for that prime real estate with bluebirds and other cavity nesters. Going forward in 1872, another society released about 4,000 songbirds as an experiment. And then, like I told you guys, the population almost went to extinction. So really, really close there. But it's not all negative news. That was in the past. The reason that today, other factors that can affect population size, as we know weather, we talked about that. If you get frost in the winter, their food source is not existent. There are predators, could be in the form of house sparrows, and I'll tell you about some other ones in a moment. Availability of food, competition for those nest sites, and then certain different environmental controls. I just love this picture. I love seeing a cute, grumpy bluebird. I don't know about you. Loss of habitat. You guys, if you've been in Loudoun for any length of time, you know that the geography here has changed a lot. So bluebirds, being those secondary cavity nesters, they love the old trees. If you have any land or trees at home, you know that old trees pose a threat to you and your family. You trim the trees, you take off the dead branches. That could have been a great place for a bluebird to nest. Something else that was new to me, if you take a look at the picture on the right, the old fence posts were great places for bluebird nests too, but there's been less farmland and different types of, more durable posts and fences now too. So that's been removed as an option for many bluebirds. Other factors that can affect their habitat and population, which I'm sure you know about: human influence, especially different chemicals that pollute not only their drinking water, but our drinking water too. and it can poison the insects that they're eating, or the plants that the insects rely on too. Okay, so we've covered different environmental controls that affect population size. There's something else too, invasive species, which I've already given you a little precursor to, but this can really affect bluebirds negatively as well. So the house sparrow, I've got a great quote for you guys. I'll read it out to you. Without question, the most deplorable event in the history of American ornithology was the introduction of an English sparrow. So W.L. Dawson, we had a quote from him beginning of the presentation, said that in 1903. So like I told you, very aggressive and competitive for nesting sites and food. And the top right picture is the house sparrow. The picture on the left is the European starling. In the top right photo, you'll see that some of the destruction house sparrows can cause. They will chase away the bluebirds. Not only that, but they can sometimes peck the chicks or even the adults to death. So it is a big fight for space. And then sometimes they'll even weave the remains of bluebirds into their nests. So the way to identify a house sparrow nest is they're very, very messy. They're not neatly woven and packed like a bluebird nest is. They funnel up and usually take up the whole nest box. And there's trash in there. I mean, I found bits and pieces of trash, cigarette butts, pieces of a mask, twine. It just, you know, it's funny because I feel like it even looks like they're not native to Virginia. You can almost tell that they're invasive just because it's so chaotic there, right? It seems like, wow, I don't know if this bird fits in this ecosystem. Now, not all the birds that you'll see and deal with if you come monitor with us are a threat to bluebirds. The bluebirds do have what I call some friendly natives. And these birds are cavity nesters as well, which is why they'll use the nest boxes. But I want you to take a look at this note in red, that all native birds are protected by federal law. So they can use, and they can't be evicted from, the nest boxes. The only reason that we eradicate the house sparrow nests are because they are invasive. So the wren or the tree swallow, if they use the box, we are not touching that. We're recording the data normally, just like they were a bluebird. That's good for us to know as well. And we're helping those birds fledge, and we're helping clean those nests out when the birds have fledged. So I have some great pictures for you. These are friendly neighbors, woodpeckers. They are the primary cavity nesters, so they will drill holes in the tree and use them, and then bluebirds can benefit from them later if they haven't found a home in Loudoun Wildlife nest boxes. Another species that we see, tree swallows, they can peacefully coexist with bluebirds. They're the most common cavity nesting bird in North America. And I use these two adjectives to describe them. I think they're bold and protective. They like to take a dive when you're checking the boxes. I call it swooping. They'll swoop down. They're very bold. They get close to you. I make sure to wear my wide brim hat. And they'll also have a couple birds kind of guarding their nest. But tree swallows, you can tell they have a different looking nest than the bluebirds. If you take a look at this top left picture, they line their nest with feathers. So that's the key piece of information that helps me identify a tree swallow nest, as if they're lining with feathers. And we don't touch that nest. We just take the data and we watch those tree swallow babies grow. Another friendly neighbor of the bluebird, we have the chickadees and the tufted titmouse. They build a moss nest and lay tiny white eggs with brown dots. I have yet to see a chickadee nest, I know that some people out in Eastern Loudoun have, but where I monitor, maybe there just aren't a lot around there. But that one is easily identifiable by the moss nest. In that binder I told you guys about, if you monitor with us, there are pictures of the different species nests to help you easily identify too. So if you come and join us, you're never alone. We have all of this information for you to make it really easy. Even if you're a beginner and you know nothing about birds, that's exactly how I started. So we want to make it approachable to everybody. Moving on to another friendly neighbor, the house wren. This is one of my favorite nests. They do a nest of sticks, and then they lay about 5 to 8 really, really small tan dotted eggs. They're maybe a third of the size of bluebirds, half the size. And it can be tricky to look into those nests. They're quite tall. And even with our mirrors, we provide that in the bins for monitoring. You can't always see past the sticks. So that's a fun challenge to try to work out. How in the world am I going to count the eggs and record the numbers if I can't see it? But the wrens are cavity nesters as well. They are protected by federal law. We don't touch or remove those nests. We just monitor the data as we would if it were a bluebird nest. Okay, so we're getting closer to the end, into question time. I want to tell you guys a little bit about the nest boxes themselves. So again, if you've monitored with us, a lot of this is very familiar. But if you're new, I want to kind of teach you about some of the cool instruments that have been added. It's not just a post in a house. There are some other neat things that have been developed over the years to protect the birds inside. So nest boxes, I'm sure you guys have seen this maybe at your local park or even in your neighborhood. We have the box on a metal pole usually, and they're very specific. You know, if you were to ever build one yourself, there are very specific requirements for the sizes of everything to make sure that the bird can get in, but not other predators. So the entrance hole is it's 1.5 inches diameter. There's no perch. The boxes are constructed to make sure that there's proper ventilation and drainage. You don't want to encourage unsanitary conditions. And you also need to make sure that it's easy monitor access. I am quite short, so we don't want anything too tall where us short people can't see in there. And then there is a ladder on the inside front panel. So placement does matter. When Loudoun Wildlife has either been making these trails or taking them over from someone else, hopefully they're built intentionally with the opening away from oncoming wind, and usually not facing the woods. So I love this right here. We've got a Noel guard on the front. That's that little wire cage, wire mesh. It prevents raccoons and cats from getting in. Yes, they would love a bluebird egg snack. We also have a snake guard. This is it's a metal cylinder where the top is closed, and it's not tightly latched to the pole. Even in the wind, sometimes if I'm monitoring on a windy day, I'll hear the snake guard rattle because it's supposed to be loose. Not to gross anybody out who doesn't like snakes like I do, but if the snake tries to slither up, because the guard is wiggling side to side, the snake can't get any traction to get up into the box. And I will tell you, these snake guards are needed. I have some friends who had a box without one. They opened up their box, were really excited to see a new nest, and there was a snake, black snake, all curled up in there, nice and cozy. So Loudoun Wildlife, all of ours have one or should have one to prevent that. And just a close-up look to the Noel guard that goes at the cover of the entrance hole of the nest. The snake guard, a couple more specific dimensions there. And all of this too, we'll send it out to you guys. So if you are really hands-on, or you're an engineer, you like this kind of stuff, if you want to see this, we'll make sure it gets to you. And then these are a couple of other designs here. So why do we need all this? Because we've got rats, cats, and snakes. Oh my, they want a treat. If it's there, if it's easy, they're going for it. Okay, so I want to talk about and bust a couple myths here. Some people have a concern about being a monitor because they say, well, if I open the nest and my smell gets on it, the mom's going to leave them and never return and they'll be abandoned. If we monitor well, we are helping the bluebirds more, right? We're not harming them as long as we're doing it well. The moms won't desert the nest. Their bluebirds are tolerant of it as long as you follow the protocol. If you want to come and join us, we would love to have you. We do have some openings this season, but we will teach you, and hopefully you won't feel overwhelmed by it. There are very clear steps about how you can do this effectively and efficiently. And it's very fun to learn, and it's awesome to know that you're making a positive difference. Now, I did talk about it, but it's worth saying it again. You do not want to get struck by this great idea and say, oh, this is amazing. I'm so inspired. I want to make my own nest box. I'll have the Boy Scouts help me and I'll get a couple out on my property. If we do that, but we don't keep up with it, we are providing the perfect opportunity for invasive species to grow. So if we don't check it, the house sparrows will likely take over. We know that they're aggressive. We know that they're going to harm the bluebirds. So we want to make sure that anytime we take on a new project, we're doing it wisely. Loudoun Wildlife is very careful about the trails that they've started and that they maintain. Because of this reason, we need to make sure that we have the people and the volunteers to upkeep the trails, to make sure that we're helping the native species instead of getting inspired by a good idea, but then not following through and kind of causing more harm than if we had just left it alone. So hopefully that makes sense, that it is really fun, it is really exciting, but it is also a commitment too, right? These boxes, they can last for a while if they're well made. So we want to make sure that we are monitoring them. And that happens once a week, usually on the weekends. So after nesting season, we really start to see things slow down in August. I still go and monitor on my trails that I'm on, but I don't see much. I don't anticipate to see much either. Those bluebirds will flock and roost together to stay warm. And then usually we do one last lap through and winterize our trails or make sure they're cleaned out and ready to go for the next season. So some ways, if you are a bird lover, I'll go through these quickly, but there are a couple different ways of attracting bluebirds. A bird bath is awesome. No matter what the season is, bluebirds need a reliable source of clean drinking water. We know that bluebirds do stay in Virginia throughout the winter, so they always need that. And then also tasty treats. The best one, and I know Loudoun Wildlife would support this, we're all about native plants, right? Let's strengthen our local native ecosystem. Bluebirds do love mealworms, but you kind of have to weigh that. You don't want to always rely on that because you don't want to keep attracting the bluebird just for the mealworm. You want to make sure that we're actually helping support our ecosystem, our backyard, our park, whatever it is. So local trees are awesome. Local flowering shrubs too, especially the ones that flower in the winter. As you know, bluebirds are sometimes hard pressed to find food in the winter. Okay. So hopefully you got something out of this. We will take questions in a little bit, but our purpose was to give you a very brief overview of bluebirds and some of the native and non-native species here in Virginia and how you can get involved if you'd like to. Monitoring is really fun. Again, I've done it for 7 years. It's not too big of a commitment. I usually go to my trail twice a month. We alternate weeks with the other monitors. It can be on your own schedule. It's really fulfilling just to get outside and to know that you're making a difference. So Kim can help us with that, but I do know that we still have quite a few openings for this season. So if you want to join us, we would love to get you connected and involved. We're going to have a hands-on training for those of you who are new, or for those of you who have monitored with us for a while and just need a refresher. So my last thing to say is I really appreciate you guys being here. I hope you learned something new. And if you want to come join us, do it. We have a blast. I can't say enough about it. So with that, we can take questions. You can either send them to Kim in the chat if you'd like to. And I'm going to leave you guys, I'll leave this slide up for you. This is Kim's email that you can reach out to her if you're interested in monitoring or getting on a new trail. You can always pick up another trail too. At one time, I was on 2 or 3 trails. And then I have a couple of websites that would be helpful for you too, if you want to see some of those infographics or get a little more information. So Kim, I will throw it to you if we have questions or if somebody wants to get in touch with you to join us.
Thanks so much, Kylie. We really appreciate lots of great information out there today. And yes, so we did have a question, and that is from someone who has who has been monitoring with us, and they wanted to know if our data sheets had any changes for this year. And I checked with Rich. Rich is who does all of our data collecting, and he said that as of today, there have been no changes in our data reporting sheets. So we'll be using the same ones that we did last year. And another question, if we catch live English sparrows, what is the suggested disposal method?
Ooh. I guess somebody has had some experience with those house sparrows and know how devious they can be. Kim, I will say, I mean, do you want to share what you think, or do you want me to share?
I don't know. I'm a volunteer coordinator. I'm not a Bluebird person.
So
sorry.
I will tell you guys, I think it's what you can stomach, and I don't want to be crass by saying that, but I've had monitors who have found house sparrow eggs and they did not have the heart to dispose of the eggs. They couldn't do it. And that's a little bit easier, right? If you remove the eggs and they're not incubated, depending on how young they are, they're not gonna hatch and fledge. Some people see the eggs laid and they say, I can't do it. I can't take it away, and they leave it. So I'm curious about having, it sounds like you have an adult one. And I would say, I think that's your personal, I think people have a different way to dispose what they kind of can handle personally. So I know that doesn't help a ton, but I know that for us, if we see house sparrow eggs, we are allowed to remove them, put them in a bag, and throw them out. So hopefully that helps you a bit.
Thanks, Kylie. And yes, as I said, whenever we started, we are recording this. So I will be able to send you all a link to be able to watch this recording again if you want to. But then I will also include information about signing up to become a monitor, if that's something that you are interested in doing. As I said, we have 53 or 54 trails that are all throughout the county. We need some help in the areas of South Riding, Leesburg, and Percival. And then we have 1 or 2 openings in miscellaneous other places throughout the county. And for all of our trails, we like to set them up so that we have a trail leader and then 3 monitors. So that way each person will go to the nest box 1 time a month throughout the season. And the season begins mid to late March and goes till the beginning to mid-August. We have had nests going until the beginning of September. But most of them are usually done by then, from what I understand.
Mhm. Yeah. Kim, are you okay if we say a thank you to everybody and kind of wrap up the presentation side, just if anybody does need to jet off? Is that okay with you?
Oh, yeah, that's fine with
Okay,
me.
perfect. So if you are on and you don't have any questions and you're already connected or you have what you need, thank you again one last time for coming. It was great to have you. So if you need to go, please feel free to, but we'll hang on and take questions with everybody else.
Yes, thank you everyone so much for coming today. Our next question, should we be disposing of nests before it has eggs if it's clear it is not a bluebird nest?
That's a great question. So I can get you some infographics of what the native nests are. So if it's, we can kind of do this decision tree. If it's a native nest, it's a native species. If it's in a nest box, it is protected and we cannot remove that. So I think it depends if you're talking about your home nest or not. But if it's a wren, the chickadee, the swallow, we have to leave that and let the birds lay eggs. And that's fine. We're supporting, even though it's bluebird monitoring, we're still supporting other native species. That's great. The ones that we are able to remove are the house sparrow nests because they're invasive and they're non-native species. The only other exception to that would be if you have a nest. This has happened to me a couple times when I've monitored. I've gone back and I've looked over at the previous monitor's data and I've noticed, okay, it's a bluebird nest, but it was empty last week. It's empty this week. And I'm on week, and I get to week 3 and it's still empty. There are no eggs laid. Sometimes a bird will abandon a nest before it lays eggs. I'd say that's the only exception where you can move it out. And sometimes birds will lay dummy nests to kind of throw off predators. They'll build a nest with no intention of laying there. So usually if you've seen a fully formed nest for about 3 weeks consecutive and there are no eggs, you're in the clear to remove it and then give space for another bird to make another nest.
We have one person here that says if you remove house sparrow eggs, they will get enraged and retaliate by killing birds in surrounding boxes. It's better to replace live eggs with wooden eggs that will not hatch. And then someone else wanted to know where we could purchase wooden or plastic eggs, that they agree that that would be the preferred method to deter house sparrows.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Go ahead, Kim, sorry.
oh no, go ahead.
Okay, I will say I have not used that before. So unfortunately, I can't give you, a good site for that, but I would say virginiabluebirds.org might have something on that. That's a good one to try. I know on the trails I've been on, there's one at a winery where house sparrows overrun that area. It used to be very bluebird dominant, and then in the last few years it changed to house sparrows. Thankfully, I haven't seen that retaliation. If we stay on top of house sparrow nests, we've seen a lot of bluebirds fledge without any damage to them, but I would not put it past the house sparrows. So I can't give you a great site for that. If somebody else knows one, put it in the chat for us, that'd be great. But I would say check these last 2 websites on that yellow sticky. They might have some good advice there for us.
And another question, if I am installing a bluebird box at home, when should it be put up?
So bluebirds can lay as early as late March. I would say, if you're ready to make the commitment to check it regularly, to help native birds, give yourself plenty of time. I mean, early mid-March, which we're almost there. It's crazy. But that would be good. And even if you didn't have the time and you got it up in April, that's fine. There's still a chance that you would have cavity nesters come in throughout the season, because like we talked about, some of those birds have 2 to 3 clutches per season.
And then this question, where can we buy the boxes that you use? And I'll go ahead and add to that. There is a gentleman named Clark Walters who's down in the Charlottesville area, and he builds a lot of boxes every year that he offers out to all of the public bluebird trails that are throughout the state. And he offers them, you know, for sale to the trails that are throughout the state. I know that one good place to buy bluebird nest boxes is through Wild Birds Unlimited. And you want to use a reputable place that you know knows birds, because there's very specific requirements within a bluebird house. And so these reputable places such as Wild Birds Unlimited, they will have houses. And Kylie, do you have anything to add? Or
I think that's perfect. Yeah. And then the websites on that yellow sticky, I know I'm a broken record, but they'll give you information too about those exact dimensions. I know we've had local Boy Scouts build them as some of their projects, so it's definitely doable if you're handy. But like Kim said, you just want to make sure it's according to those dimensions for the safety of the birds, to prohibit predators, that kind of thing.
yes, and the Virginia Bluebird Society has excellent drawings that have like the exact dimensions and the whole 9 yards on it.
Like the blueprint, right? Is that what we call it?
Yes, yes. Let's see. Oh, here's a good question. You can just, oh, they're saying you can just give house sparrow eggs a good shaking so that they won't develop, and put them back in the nest.
Oh, I love that. Love
Yeah, so that way
that.
you don't have to worry about finding eggs. So
Love that.
okay, and this person, please chat about the 2-hole bluebird box which opens in the front.
Oh yeah, the mansion nest boxes, is that? Yeah, my brain is not one of an engineer. But I I like them for how easy they are to access as a monitor, the front opening ones. And so we call them the mansion boxes. I do think birds like them. At least on my trails, they've never been empty, and they seem to be the first ones that are chosen. I couldn't tell you exactly why, the rhyme or reason in it, but I know that birds do like them. I'd assume there's some kind of like safety and security with it, but I know I personally like them because they're just easy to get into. So I think there's been a little bit of a shift. Some of the newer boxes are coming out with those 2 holes. I think for accessibility, and because the birds do prefer that as a nesting site.
And then also chat about where to place bluebird boxes.
Yeah, so you want to do it away. You don't want it facing any wind coming in. You want to make sure that within about 100 feet, you want to make sure that there is some kind of shrub, like a big bush or a tree, so that the bird can fly out to that quickly. You don't want it just open, right? You want some coverage. And then facing away from the woods, just safety wise. Let me see. Yeah, the box away from prevailing wind, and then some kind of shrub within 100 feet. I think those are the biggest stipulations. But honestly, bluebirds will make do with a lot. Again, I've monitored at wineries, out at nature preserves, in the suburb neighborhoods, and they'll be happy most anywhere. But I'd say those are the 2 big ones.
Okay. And then should a bluebird box be facing east?
Um,
I know out where I live, the winds are prevailing west, so I definitely wouldn't
mhm,
want to have it facing west.
yeah. I think that's a safe bet. I will tell you, I wouldn't 100% give you a 100% confident answer. Um, I know depending on where you live, like which side of the mountain you're on, right? But that could be good, yeah. Um, and if the person who's asking this question is setting one up in their yard, we can always get in touch with you too. Like if you want to kind of say here, hey, here's our plan. Give us, give us the blueprints of it, and we can take a peek at it with you.
When do sparrows nest and lay eggs? I cannot look into their nests, and sometimes I cannot see where they nest.
Okay. Um, I'm assuming this person maybe doesn't have a nest box if they can't see where they've nested. But they have the same breeding season as the bluebirds. We'll see nests around the same time, like in that April to July-ish area where they're out breeding.
Okay. If I'm not ready to add boxes to my property, what steps can I take to provide natural nesting spots for my bluebirds?
I love that. Okay, I love that question because I feel like it's kind of grounded in the reality of the commitment of a nest box, and really, our push isn't our desire, and our push isn't everybody should get a nest box. No, no, because I don't think that would be wise or sustainable if people can't keep up with it. So one of the best things that you can do is plant native plants. Um, and plants that flower and bloom at different seasons, at different times of the year. That is going to be a really good source. You might not be able to provide the nesting site for a bluebird, but you could provide the food for a bluebird. And those bluebirds travel about 2 to 3 miles. That's kind of the livable space they need. So I'm sure that within that radius, you have tons of bluebirds that would come to your yard to get food, to get their berries or their bugs. So that is the biggest thing you could do. And that would help so many other aspects of the ecosystem, but plant native plants that bloom throughout the year at different times so that if it's fall, spring, winter, you've got something flowering and blooming at your yard at all times.
Someone remarked that the advantage of two hole boxes is they allow a bird to escape an attacker that has entered the nest. And that's very hard to do in a one-hole box.
No kidding.
Let's see. I am trying to get rid of the house sparrows around my house. So can I put up a bluebird box?
Yes, you could. I think just go into it knowing the reality that it might be overrun with house sparrows for a while. But if you're diligent, I mean, it might feel like, oh my gosh, I keep removing the house sparrow nests. But I mean, if you're diligent with it, eventually you'll hopefully get a native species in there. So I don't think I would, if somebody was truly ready to make a commitment to the box long term, I wouldn't tell them not to do it, but I would just let them know that they're going to need to stay on top of it and not to get discouraged if you feel like what you're doing all season is just removing house sparrow nests. That's happened a lot on some trails. Like we have specific boxes, it might be box 5, 7, and 12 that always have a house sparrow nest that we're cleaning. And then you might get one bluebird nest for the season and it feels like a big win. So my advice is if you can stay on top of it and you can commit to it and you're not gonna, you're not deterred by the reality of that, then go for it.
And do new monitors go out with a partner?
Yes.
So,
Oh, sorry, Kim. Go
oh
ahead.
no. So whenever people are new monitors and I am placing them on a trail that needs some monitors, I reach out to the trail leader and then have the trail leader reach out to the new monitors to provide the training that they need. So yes, new monitors do get training on site with the trail leader. And then we are also having a hands-on training for all of our monitors and trail leaders that will be coming up in mid-March. And Kylie, if you'd like to add.
No, I think that's perfect. Yeah, we got the hands-on training and you're never alone. And even if you go out alone, I bring my phone with me and I take pictures and I say, hey, is this a house sparrow nest? Can I move it? Your team, even if you never meet them, they will be very supportive. So you are never alone in this.
Yes, and then you can also always, any questions that you have, we have set up an email address that's bluebirds@loudounwildlife.org. So, you're always welcome to email that address if you have questions. We have several people who receive that email and can answer them. And then also too, for our people that are trail leaders and monitors, we also have a Facebook group where you can always ask questions. And then of course, as Kylie said, you've also always got your trail leader up for your trail and then your other fellow monitors as well. And someone commented painting only latex. So I'm not sure.
Let me see. Also, is William still on? He asked about, I'm just catching up on the chat. He said that the bluebirds haven't like dried mealworms, soak them. We tell people to soak them first and they will like those a lot better.
Oh, good job, Kylie. I totally did not see that question.
I thought I should pop in and double check. I'm behind on all this.
Yeah, I thought I was doing a good job keeping up. Maybe
No,
not.
You are. No, I think I'm getting a couple direct messages too, so maybe that's why.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And so this maybe goes on with the painting only latex. And then someone else said they are saying don't use oil-based paints. Do you know anything about painting the boxes? I don't.
I'm wondering, well, I know that if you, so you can use a bar of soap on, in the nest if like there's an ant invasion, but you want to make sure that it's a clean, you don't want to do obviously anything fragrant, but I'm wondering if it's sort of similar for like concern about the bluebird health. That's the assumption, but I don't know that I know the context enough.
Yeah.
Okay, are we caught up on?
Okay, and then only if you want to paint them latex because it's water-based and there's no fumes. They are talking about painting the outside of the boxes to preserve the wood.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes, and from what I understand, you also want to be sure that if you do paint, I think that you probably want to keep it with a light color so that the house stays cool, because I know that sometimes that can be issues with bluebird boxes getting too warm. So it's like if you paint the outside to preserve the wood, I would use a light color, not something dark.
Awesome. Man, I'm learning a lot from the chats too. I love it. We got a lot of wealth of knowledge in this group. It's great.
And I believe that's all the questions I have.
Okay.
Any last questions before we sign off? Well, thank you all so much for coming today. And thank you, Kylie. We really
Of
appreciate
course.
you taking the time to do this great presentation for us.
Of course, guys, thanks for joining and staying on till the bitter end.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Kim.